गप्पा मारतोय तर तुम्ही तुमचं चालू द्या. हां, तुम्हाला प्रेशर नको घ्यायला. झालंय स्टार्ट लाईव्ह? ओके ओके ठीक आहे. So good morning and once again welcome to our discussion, dear students. Yesterday we had discussed the details of industrial revolution. We saw how Europe went from the medieval times towards modern times. We saw that transition taking place. We understood what is the fall of Constantinople, geographical discoveries after that, scientific revolution, agricultural revolution, so on and so forth. And we had reached up to the point of why the revolution takes place in England. है ना? So we are seeing now within that the geographical reasons why it takes place in England. Okay? So can somebody tell me what are the geographical reasons without seeing on the screen? Try to recall actively. Why did this revolution take place in England? Okay. Very good.
They were away from all of this political.
Fantastic.
So, apart from that, there were national harbors that were formed because their ports and
Correct.
that more.
Okay. Okay. Natural harbors were there, maritime activity was there, right? What else was there in England? Coal reserves, iron reserves were there, है ना? Industrial revolution के लिए very important resources are coal and iron, and both of these resources were there in abundant quantity in England. So that is an important factor. What else? Yes, very good. Correct.
Navigating.
So crisscrossing rivers, and that made water-based navigation very easy. Okay. Okay. Anything else? Yeah, that largely covers everything. So we have seen the geographical reasons why the revolution takes place in England. Okay. This is your first session, right? So don't worry. The previous two sessions are available on our website. You get a student's login and you can access those lectures. So don't worry about that. Even on YouTube, they are available since first few lectures. We have kept them live on YouTube. Okay. So just watch those lectures today. And if you have any doubt and query, after the class, I'll share my contact as well with you. So please feel free to talk to me today evening itself if you have any doubts. Let's start. Okay. So we have seen the physical or geographical factors that helped the revolution in England. Now let us go to the next type of factors, which is political factors. Okay. What are the political, oh sorry, before that we are seeing economic in the slide. Economic factors. So we missed one slide here. Yeah, so political factors. So what are the political factors? Now, dear students, a lot of these factors are actually interconnected, enmeshed. So you will see that one is a corollary of the other. Okay, so you'll find some overlap, some interconnections, but that is how human civilization evolves. We are not completely in separate silos. So पहला economic factor क्या है? Why does the revolution take place in England first? First political factor is political stability in England. राजकीय जिसको हम स्थैर्य कहेंगे वो इंग्लैंड में हमको देखने मिलता है. Why was there political stability? Again, connected with geography. It was an island. Therefore, England was not involved in any conflicts in Europe directly. Continental armies did not come and wage a war on this side of the English Channel. Okay? and therefore there was political stability. जब political stability होती है तो क्या होता है? Yesterday I told you we have unlimited dreams, है ना? We human beings have unlimited dreams, and that's why the next dream is unlocked. People demand for democracy. ठीक है? So ब्रिटेन के अंदर में डेमोक्रेसी होने लगती है, डेमोक्रेटिक डेवलपमेंट्स होने लगती है. Now why are these democratic developments important? डेमोक्रेसी की वजह से क्या फर्क पड़ता है? What happens because of democracy? See, if you have an absolute monarchy, then it totally depends on the ruler. He can take any decision at any point of time and there will not be any challenge. मान लीजिए आपने किसी ऐसे कंट्री में इन्वेस्ट किया जहां पे एक पावरफुल डिक्टेटर है, ठीक है? That powerful dictator tomorrow decides that I want to take over all your wealth. Can you do anything about it? No. ठीक है? So वैसे ही if there are absolute monarchs, then your investment is always at risk. You always have to throw yourself at the feet of that absolute monarch to keep him happy, that he allows you to do your business. Okay? But when you have democracy, you have share in the political power, you have parliament, you have rule of law, then naturally whatever business you're doing, that is much more safer for you. Is it not? Okay. So these democratic developments in Britain, they enabled. You remember yesterday we saw the revolution called as Glorious Revolution 1688. You remember this? So what happened because of this glorious revolution? You see, Britain will have constitutional monarchy. Moreover, there will be representation in the parliament for the rich elite. Okay? And these rich elite were the same people who were investing in factories. So they had access to power, they had access to parliament, and therefore that helped them to, catalyze the industrial revolution in Britain. Is it logical? Is it logical? Everybody agrees with this? Point number 2. Point number 3, because of this nature, we see that the orientation of the state becomes pro-capitalist. What do we mean by pro-capitalist over here? Pro-capitalist means the state starts to favor capitalism. It will pass several laws, make many policy measures. For what? For encouraging capitalist activities. Why is it doing so? Why is the state doing so? Because the entire elite in that country who is part of the state, they are all themselves investors. They are all factory owners. The ruling elite, the rich people, they all have their own factories. So what will they do? Naturally use the power of the state to pass laws that were favorable to them. Do you understand this? One example of one such law I'll tell you. Britain passed many such laws such as the navigation laws. Navigation laws. What were these navigation laws? ब्रिटेन ने ये कायदा कानून पास किया कि whatever trade takes place in the British Empire, from Britain to America, Britain to Africa, Britain to India, Southeast Asia, they had a big empire. कहा जाता था the sun never sets on the British Empire, है ना? So on this huge landmass, whatever trade is to take place, that will be done using only British shipping. No other shipping can be used. Okay? No German shipping, no French shipping, okay? No Indian shipping also for that matter. Only which shipping? British shipping will be used. Now what happens because of this law? British shipping gets a boost. It's a small country otherwise, but the empire is huge. So all of the business, all of the trade that is going on will go exclusively to British shipping. And who is owning this British shipping? It is the British capitalists. Does that give them an advantage? Okay? Does that help them to industrialize more faster? Because they now have more profits, more money, more reinvestment, and all the rich elites are making a lot of handsome returns. Clear? ठीक है? So first factor क्या देखा हमने? Let's clean this up. Political stability that leads to democratic developments that enables development of a pro-capitalist state. All the ruling elites, the ruling class, the king, the courtiers, the parliamentarians, all the people, they are themselves investors. They're themselves investors. They have their own factories. So what will happen naturally? They will be supporting. Like if you see today, unfortunately, we see that there's a lot of politician businessman nexus in our country also. Is it not? A lot of these big businesses, they are either secretly owned by big politicians, or at least there is a quid pro quo. Okay, the business helps the politicians help the business. Okay, well, not a very good thing, but not such a bad thing also. Why? Because when the state supports business, it of course profits them, but it also leads to development, employment, infrastructure development, so on and so forth. Okay, so Britain mein to this was happening very openly and wholeheartedly. Okay, the entire ruling elite was itself investing, and therefore there was complete support towards the industrial activities. Clear everyone? ये सारी जो अक्ल है, all of this wisdom, next doors France को बहुत देर से आई. France will start to industrialize very late. Okay, they'll take quite some time to catch up. Why? Because ये nature जो है France के state में नहीं था. They are rivals. They are competitors. They're fighting wars. You know, in India also they fought wars, Anglo-French wars. We'll see that in modern India. In the whole world, wherever they had colonies, America, Africa, Asia, India in particular, everywhere the British and French are fighting. And the British are able to emerge victorious. Why? Because they had industrial revolution advantage behind them. Clear everyone? Okay? Right. Several laws were passed. I told you one of them. Now, enclosure laws. You remember enclosure laws that we saw yesterday? Enclosure movement and enclosure laws. कल discuss किया था हमने, remember? So what had happened was earlier the land was open for anyone to cultivate. Okay? Harry or Haria, remember the character? Always, it is easier or helpful to imagine it in the form of some story. Our brain, is attuned to the. You always remember stories of movies, right? You watch a movie once, and even after 5 years, somebody asks you what was the story, you'll be able to tell that story. Why is that so? But you studied something yesterday, like enclosure laws, it's difficult to recall. Why is that so? Because our brain is, trained to remember in stories. See, like go back to, the Stone Age times, where our ancestors, they were in hunting and gathering stage. See, our civilizational history is very short. If you see last 2,500 years only. But before that, millennia ago, we were, in hunting gathering stage, and we stayed in a similar stage for a very long time. So that's the bulk of our history. So when man went out to do hunting and gathering, he did that in groups. Okay? Groups of 4, 5, 7, sometimes big also. And then they hunted and came back. When the sun sets, the entire tribe, we are a social animal, so they lived in tribes. So the entire tribe gathers around the bonfire, and whatever has been collected in the day, that is kind of roasted and cooked. And while that is happening, the people who went out for the hunting gathering, they tell stories. How when they went out to the wild, they came across a very fierce animal, which was orangish yellow in color and black stripes. It's cat-like, a big cat, and it's very fierce. Okay? And it's a very dangerous animal, which, we just can't. It's better that we stay away from it. But if it attacks, then what should we do? So you tell those stories. That is your education. right? The kids who are there in that tribe, they are getting educated through that process. It is socialization also. You gather around discussions of those stories. So a lot happened over storytelling, and that happened over millennia. So our brain, genetically, we are wired to understand things in the form of stories. Okay. So our Harya, who used to have access to land before on the landlord's land to cultivate, enclosure movement stopped that access. These enclosure laws allowed the landlords to kick out people like Harya from the land and put up enclosures, compounds on their land. And within these compounds, what did they do then? Animal husbandry, sheep rearing, right? Such kind of stuff. है ना? So इससे क्या हो गया? Because of these enclosure laws, what happened? Harya is now unemployed. So what does he have to do? He has to migrate to the city where he is available as labor for industry. Okay. So can you see the law helped in industrialization in this manner? Right? So many such laws were passed by the state. These are what? These are the political factors. Clear, everybody? Clear, everyone? Okay. Now, what are the economic factors? What are the economic factors? We saw geographical, we saw political. Now, let's see economic factors. Common factor there and here, enclosure law, availability of labor. Okay? There will be overlap, as I told you. Then England had seen the agriculture revolution. You remember we discussed this? Because of science and technology advancing, newer and newer tools and implements were created. Better knowledge of seasons, better knowledge of winds, better knowledge of soil, crops, so on and so forth. And this expansion of knowledge in agriculture led to a huge bump in food production. Okay? We had much more control over nature. See, this is the quest of mankind. As a species, we are just not satisfied. We keep on going above and beyond. सितारों से आगे जहां और भी है, right? We are not क्षितिज पलीकडे ही क्षितिज असतात. We are just not satisfied with where we are at a certain point. Now see, we are trying to become a interplanetary species. You know, Elon Musk wants to have a colony on Mars. You know that human colony on Mars. That's what his goal, ambition is. Maybe it will not happen in our lifetimes, but concrete thoughts, plans are being created. Maybe in our next generation it will happen. Maybe 2 generations down the line, but it's going to happen for sure, right? So what is that? That is our quest to know more and more about nature, to control nature more and more to our advantage. ठीक है? और वही चीज एग्रीकल्चर में इस पीरियड में होती है. All the scientific know-how that we were getting, we were applying it first where? To agriculture. Because of that, more food production. Now, more food production means you can support a bigger population. Bigger population means you have a bigger market. Plus, you also have ample labor. Are these two important for industry? Market and labor? Obviously, they are. Then, availability of capital in England. In my last lecture, I had told you how geographical discoveries led to long distance trade. And this long distance trade between Europe and the colonies gave rise to a new class of merchants. These merchants made huge profits. And the capitalist always wants to make his capital work. He wants that capital to get him more and more return, better return. Okay? So, Britain had access to that capital which could be invested in creation of factories. Other countries did not have it as much. Why was the British rule a problem for India? You know, Dadabhai Navroji, he wrote a book, Poverty and Un-British Rule in India, 1860s में. Okay? In that book, the central premise is the drain of wealth. Drain of wealth that was happening from India to Britain. See, if somebody is poor today, that's not a big deal. If he has capital, if that person has capital wealth, that wealth can be invested and you can become rich. Maybe it will take a few years, decades, but you will get there. But if you are deprived of this, which was happening in case of India, we were getting poorer and poorer. Okay, when that happens, then all your opportunities are closed. That's the worst thing that can happen to you. Got this point? Okay, so all of this wealth had been drained away from India to Britain, and not just India, many other parts of the colonial empire, and consequently, the British had capital to invest in industry. Clear, everyone? Okay? All right. Next, Britain had developed a modern banking system. Bank of England is the first modern bank. Bank of England, first modern bank in the world. Around 1857, you know, India had only 3 banks, and that were also established by the British. 3 banks. Whereas in Britain, there were 600 plus banks. Just imagine the size and scale of their country and India. They had 600 and we had 3, वो भी हमारे नहीं थे. Those were established by the British. How does the banking system help? How does it help? Yes. Trade के लिए help करता है. Okay. What does banking system primarily do? Primarily क्या देता है ना बैंक? बैंक से क्या लेते हैं? Credit, right? If you want to establish some business, maybe out of 100 rupees, you will invest say 40 rupees from your pocket. You will maybe take 20 rupees, you know, capital from others. And then another 40 you will rely on credit, loan. होगा कि नहीं होगा ये? ठीक है? So you need what? You need modern banking system for it. What else can banking system do for you? What else does it do? Come on, this is logical. How can banking system help over here? Payment systems. You have to give money to your suppliers. You have to take money from your buyers. Transactions have to be done. So payment systems were made easier. See, earlier, imagine, you know, if you had to send across money, so it was done in caravans. You had to have guards and physically, you know, everything had to go, right? Now, all of that became much more easier if you have a centralized banking system. Is it not? Yes, in India, we had a system called as hundi. Have you heard of this? Hundi? हुंडी पता है आपको? तो हुंडी जो है भारत में एंशिएंट टाइम से नाम अलग अलग रहे हैं, बट वी हैड दिस सिस्टम. तो कैसे होता था कि इन द बिग सिटीज यू यूज्ड टू हैव पीपल हु वर कॉल्ड एज श्रॉफ्स. हिंदी मराठी में बोलते हैं सराफ. ठीक है, और उसका एंग्लिसाइज्ड वर्जन है जैकी श्रॉफ. Okay. So who were these shroffs? These were people who, apart from giving, you know, interest-based loans, they also connected with each other. Say, for example, somebody is coming from city A and going to city B, and this person wants to take a lot of wealth. Okay. Now, A to B distance in those days will be 300 kilometers. And 300 kilometers you have to walk literally, as in even if you're on a horse, you know, you still are going at a slow speed. There's always a risk that you will be attacked, looted. Back then, law and order and everything was difficult. So what these people used to do was, they used to go to a shroff, in city A and deposited their wealth with him. Wait, this is my 100 rupees, for example. I want this 100 rupees in city B. Okay. So Shroff from city A will say, okay, but I will take a commission of 10%. You will get safely your wealth over there in city B, but not full 100 rupees. You will get 90 rupees. Okay. So this person says, okay, fine. He was given a written document which was called as the hundi, which he can very easily now carry. Okay, he can hide it in his clothes. He does not need any protection. He does not have to carry stuff with him. He can go to city B, and then there will be another shop. These people are connected over the generations. They have been doing that business. And originally, kahin na kahin family relations वगैरह इनके रहते थे. So in city B, he goes and deposits that hundi, and he gets 90 rupees. The 10 rupees is shared between these two. अब ये कैसे share करेंगे ये लोग? So often somebody will be going from city B to city A also. So they net off. ठीक है? They net off amongst themselves. ठीक है? इस तरीके से काम चलता था. That is called as hundi system. But then still there were many practical challenges, problems which modern banking system helped to overcome. ठीक है? तो ये modern banking system was a big advantage for Britain. Banking की वजह से एक फायदा भी क्या होता है? You are able to mobilize the savings of the country. आपने देखा होगा कि जब आर्कियोलॉजिकल एक्सकवेशन होती है, you always come across what are called as hoards. खजाना मिल गया, ठीक है ना? सो किसी मटके में बहुत सारे सिक्के आपको मिल जाते हैं. So since there was no modern banking system, how did people save money for bad times? Whatever they had, some people had few, some people had more. They used to put them in a pot and bury them inside the floor. Okay, so जब कभी जरूरत पड़ेगी तो निकाल के ले लेंगे. But then sometimes you simply forget, intergenerational वो भूल जाते हैं लोग, तो बाद में आर्कियोलॉजी में वो मिलता है. But that wealth which was hoarded, इसी से word आता है hoarded. That wealth which was hoarded was not available in the economy. Banking system क्या करता है? Banking system बोलता है, why do you want to keep it like a hoard in your home? There's so much of risk. So come and save it in an account. Whenever you want, it's your money, you can take it back. Moreover, I will also give you some interest on it, 4%, 3%, whatever it is. Okay, so your money is slowly at least increasing. And the larger benefit is when people save this money in the bank, that money can then be lent out to other people in need. So this was the modern banking system that developed in Britain, which gave a big boost to the economy. Can you imagine how much of effect it can create if all of that money that was earlier hoarded is now available for credit? Everybody is winning. Bank is getting profit. I am getting interest for saving. My money is more safe. And the person who needs money is getting loan. Win-win for everybody. Okay, this developed in Britain. Got it now? Okay, sure. Let's go ahead. Emergence of cities. We have seen this. Places like Manchester. You might have heard it in context of football. Very famous for its football club. But Manchester originally was famous for what? It was famous for textile manufacturing industry. Liverpool, another city famous for football now, was also a famous industrial city. To give you example from here, just a few decades ago, Pimpri Chinchwad was like a rural area. My father used to tell me that in his school days, that is 60s, if somebody was going to Pimpri Chinchwad, they used to take a suitcase and board a ST from Pune and go there. Hardly 15 kilometers, but they used to go in that manner. It was like you're going to a rural area. But government brought MIDC plants over there, and because of that industry, a full-fledged city, in many ways better than Pune also, developed. Is it not? So similarly, industrial revolution gave rise to many new cities. Clear? Okay. Modern means of communication started to develop. We have spoken about the macadamized Pakka road. railway was introduced. Why? इतनी बड़ी टेक्नोलॉजी तभी आ सकती है when there is profit. कोई फायदा होना चाहिए ना उसका. I told you that Marathi phrase the other day. सगळ्या गोष्टींचा सोंग घेता येतो पण पैशाचा नाही. You can act out anything except having money. Okay? So if you want to do a big project, it better be very profitable. Railways could be deployed profitably because industrial revolution was going to support it. So railways were introduced. 1814, first time they start transportation, but for coal. And then 1833 onwards, they start transporting people also. So long distance travel became fast, cheap, and also more convenient. Back in the day, when people traveled from one place to another, even if you were very rich, the best that you could get was you could go on a palanquin. Palki mein aap ja sakte. Okay? And 4 people ahead, 4 people behind, they have to carry you. Just imagine they are also human beings. They'll have to keep changing hands. So if 8 people are required to lift that palanquin, you have to have 8 people spare walking along, because when these people get tired, you have to keep on rolling. And this was a great luxury possible only for the super rich of those times. But now anybody with limited money also could travel over greater distance at cheaper prices. Postal system, modern postal system based on stamps. Now of course this is outdated. I am lucky that I have seen, I was at that transition point where the old was changing to the new. You might have perhaps never seen somebody sending a postal letter. So back in the day, even in 1990s, people used to send letters, and then letters were very carefully written. You first made a rough draft, then you made a fair draft out of it, and then it was put in an envelope neatly sealed, and then a stamp was fixed on it. Then you go to the post office, and then you send it to your loved ones. And there was great joy, by the way, in receiving a letter. The touch and feel of paper, the smell, okay, and the postman coming to your place and saying कि आपका letter आया है. Everything was, it was really great in its own way. Now, of course, we have much better means of communication in seconds, irrespective of whether your friend is in Manhattan or Manipur. Within seconds, you can send across the message. But until recently, this system served humanity very well. Okay, a modern, structured, stamps-based postal system, यूनिफॉर्म रेट्स. भारत में भी ये 1854 में लॉर्ड डेलाउजी लेके आएगा, और 1853 में रेलवे डेलाउजी भारत लेके आया. 1814 it starts, 33 for people, and 1853 first railway ran in the then Bombay. Okay, so from Bombay to Thane, that was the first. By the way, interestingly, that was not going to be the first railway car trial. The first trial was going to happen in Calcutta. So Calcutta se Howrah, they were going to try it out. But the engine that was supposed to, pull that train, it drowned in the river. They were taking it to the station on, a boat, and that engine drowned. And that is the reason why Bombay to Thane became the first, railway related experiment in India. There's another interesting story of Indian National Congress. Where did the first session of Indian National Congress take place? Nobody knows? 1885, the first session of Indian National Congress took place in Bombay. Okay, but originally that session was planned in Pune. Back then it was called Pune, but at that time there was a plague, and there was the conditions were not very good. That's why it was cancelled, and Bombay got that honor of hosting the first session of Indian National Congress. So Bombay has been lucky in that sense. Both of these came luckily to it. It was not originally intended. So post समझ में आया आपको? Then technical training institutions. आज हमारे देश में ITI नाम की एक इंस्टीट्यूशन है, आपने सुना होगा, इंडस्ट्रियल ट्रेनिंग इंस्टीट्यूट्स, ITI. So what do we do in these ITIs? 10th pass students, they are trained in actual vocational skills, plumber, fitter, welder, these kind of things which are required in the industry, skill based. Okay, this was first started in Britain, technical training. Okay, the British people were more practical oriented rather than theory oriented. They did not, they were not as much bothered about theories of science, discoveries. They were more bothered about application of technology to make things easier. And that's why you see from the very initial phase, they had focus on technical training. This was later then adopted by India also in the form of ITIs. Got it? So these were the economic factors that led to the revolution in England. Okay? So what all different types of factors have we seen? We have seen geographical, we've seen political, we've seen economic, and we've seen, now we are now seeing other social factors. Okay? What are the social factors? You remember 9C where there was one C called as conditions. We are talking about the conditions for industrial revolution in England. Clear? What are the social factors? This is a corollary of the last point that we saw, ITIs. The British always had a practical bent of mind. What do we mean by practical bent of mind? They were more concerned with application, not with theory. And for development of any industry, what do we need? We need more application, more technology, and not as much theory. This naturally helped. You see, in contrast to this, people in Germany, they were more into science and theory. Okay? So you'll see a lot of scientists, especially scientists in the field of chemistry. Many of them are Germans because that is the nature of their society. The British, on the other hand, are practical. That helped in the Industrial Revolution. Point number one. Point number two, entrepreneurial nature of the society. Entrepreneurial मतलब समझते हैं? Business mindedness. Okay. You see, in India, there are some communities which are into business. You take the case of Marwaris, Parsis, okay? You have Bohras. There are some communities who have traditionally always been in business. Business करने के लिए एक अलग approach की जरूरत होती है. South India में you'll see Shetties. Businessmen will always, try to employ the best minds. You have somebody who is very intelligent, he has done engineering and MBA. He will be working for a businessman who will perhaps be just a BCom. But that BCom wala person, that businessman, he knows how to make profits, how to employ the best talent and resources to gain profit. Okay? That is a different type of a approach altogether. Engineering pass out हो गया, बच्चों को क्या चाहिए होता है? They want a good package. है ना? I'm getting 18 lakhs, I'm getting 14 lakhs per annum. Businessman जिसने business start किया है, maybe he'll be making just 50,000 rupees profit. And he's paying his engineer 1.5 lakh rupees. But that businessman knows that if I invest like this for 3 years, my brand name, my business will scale up. And at that time, I'll be earning 25 lakh rupees per month. This engineer is going to remain at 18 lakhs or 20 lakhs or 30 lakhs only. That much I can make in 1 month. Maybe later on in a day also. That is the approach. It requires risk taking. It requires boldness. It requires leadership skills. These are seen in certain societies. And Britain was once a society. It was bold, industrious, and risk taking. See, unfortunately, I mean, don't get me wrong, but I'm just trying to make you understand. If you see, traditionally, over here in this part of our country, in Maharashtra, we don't have as much, entrepreneurial approach as it should be. You all agree with me on this? There are communities, of course, who will have that, but broadly speaking, we don't have that entrepreneurial approach. So what do you end up? You always end up being in the middle class. You don't end up contributing anything big. You're just a cog in the wheel. If you are entrepreneurial, you can create wealth, you can generate employment. And that's what the government is also telling us. Stand up India, startup India, become employment givers, not seekers. Britain had that approach too. Third, liberal and experimenting nature of the society. If I ask you today, which country is most developed, advanced, powerful in the world right now? What will be your answer? USA by far? Yes, China is coming close, but it is still a distant second. And if I give you an opportunity, let's see, you have two choices before you. You can go to USA and live and work over there. And second is you can go to China and live and work over there, make your career there. If you have these two opportunities, which one will you accept? USA? Most likely everyone, not China. Why is that so? If I tell you that China you will get better salary, for example, you're going to get better salary than in USA. Still, most people will prefer USA. USA is more distant. China is a neighbor, closer, Asian. But we will prefer USA. Why? Because USA is liberal in nature. What do we mean by being liberal in nature? Liberal means you respect individuals' rights and freedoms. Yes. Individuals' rights and freedoms are respected. Different, freedoms like what we have in our constitution also enshrined. Originally, where are they coming from? They're coming from the American Revolution, the American Constitution, so on and so forth. Okay? And this liberal nature of USA has attracted the best talent of the world. They told people that we have huge land. The size of USA is 7 times the size of our country. 7 times. We are a massive country, aren't we? We are ourselves amazed at the diversity that we have. And imagine something that is 7 times as big. And if you see the population of USA, 7 times as big, but less than 1/3 of our population. So massive resources. And this is today. Just imagine this 50 years ago. So USA had tremendous resources, opportunities, and very small population. They needed talent from across the world. The liberal nature of its country attracted talent from across the world. You see, NASA, a lot of the NASA scientists are basically either Indians or of Indian origin. You see the doctors in USA, you'll see that 25 to 30% of doctors today are, this is a guesstimate, but there is a huge number of Indian doctors in USA. Why? Because USA owns these people, attracts these people. Now, Donald Trump has come and he's doing something really funny. Maybe it will not remain the same, at least in the foreseeable future. But overall, this is the nature of US society. The same thing was there in Britain at that time. Britain was liberal. In fact, the whole idea, the political thought of liberalism, individual rights and freedoms, respecting individual rights and freedoms, that is something that germinated in Britain. Karl Marx, originally, where is he from? He's from Germany, right? From Germany, he was kicked out and he was exiled. Where does he go? He goes to London. And in London, this guy is writing his theory. And in that theory, Das Kapital and all of those things, what is he saying? He is saying कि भैया ब्रिटेन, ये जो तुम्हारी व्यवस्था है, तुम्हारी जो सिस्टम है, कैपिटलिस्ट सिस्टम, that is based on exploitation. ठीक है, यू आर डूइंग इनजस्टिस, इसमें क्लैश होने वाला है, योर एंटायर कैपिटलिस्ट स्ट्रक्चर इज गोइंग टू बी विदर्ड अवे, देयर विल बी अ रेवोल्यूशन, वो भी वायलेंट होगा, एंड वर्कर्स विल कम टू पावर। कहां बोल रहा है ये? उनके गढ़ में बैठ करके बोल रहा है। आज के जैसा माहौल होगा तो क्या होगा? इफ वी हैव, इसको पहले ही बता देंगे, हाउ डेयर यू कि भाई तुम यहां आ रहे हो, रह रहे हो, करियर अपना बना रहे हो, एंड देन यू आर टॉकिंग अबाउट अस लाइक दिस, हाउ डेयर यू। बट ब्रिटेन वाज लिबरल इन नेचर, इट वाज रेडी टू गिव एवरीबडी द अपॉर्चुनिटी टू स्पीक व्हाटएवर दे वांटेड टू। ठीक है, वो बात चाहे जितनी ही हमारे लिए कड़वी हो। वोल्टेयर हु वाज एन एनलाइटनमेंट थिंकर, व्हाट डज ही से? इवन इफ आई डोंट अग्री विद व्हाट यू से, वोल्टेयर क्या कहता है? Even if I don't agree with what you say, I will defend to death your right to say it. मुझे आपकी बात से मैं सहमत नहीं हूं, लेकिन आपका बोलने का जो अधिकार है, अपनी बात रखने का जो अधिकार है, उसके लिए मैं अपनी जान भी दे सकता हूं। दिस इज फ्रीडम ऑफ स्पीच। ओके, व्हेन यू डोंट हैव फ्रीडम ऑफ स्पीच, when you only want to hear good things about yourself, when you want to brush away all the negative or all the criticisms, क्या होता है? You are setting up yourself for disaster. ठीक है, because you will not know when you will land in a mess. Britain was not like that. It was liberal and experimenting in nature, and that's why it developed. Got this idea? Clear? Okay. Next, free from the influence of church. Unlike the rest of Europe, which was still under some level of, not fully, but some level of church का control. ब्रिटेन में पहले ही चर्च को जो है वो अलग कर दिया था। They established their own separate church called as the Anglican Church. और इस चर्च के हेड जो है वो किंग ही थे। Yes, there's an archbishop, but ultimately this church was under the control of the king. Unlike the Roman Church, Roman Catholic Church. Okay? So this Church of Britain could not play any significant political role. It was limited only to its religious duties. Got the point? धर्म सत्ता जब पावरफुल हो जाती है तो क्या होता है? डेवलपमेंट रुक जाती है, क्रिटिकल थिंकिंग, विवेक, रीजन, ये सारी चीजें सफर करती हैं। That was not the case with Britain. Understood this? Okay. Can you tell me the social reasons in your own words? Why this revolution takes place in Britain? क्यों होता है ये? In your own words, simple words. Hindi also, if you like, you can use, no problem. Language is just a medium of expression. Language thought नहीं है। Thought यहां पर आप generate करते हैं, उसको कन्वे करने का माध्यम भाषा है। थॉट आपका ओरिजिनल हो तो भाषा जो है वो एज ए टूल आप कभी भी डेवलप कर सकते हैं। So what were the social factors? Yeah.
Not introduce the last that getting back to industrial revolution.
Okay. लिबरल का मतलब क्या है? What is liberal about? Openness, individual rights and freedoms. ठीक है? So to begin with, हम लिबरल एसोसिएट करते हैं विद पॉलिटिकल आइडियाज, फ्रीडम ऑफ स्पीच, एक्सप्रेशन, एसोसिएशन, जो हम पढ़ते हैं कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में, वो सभी चीजों से। लेकिन इसी की एक कॉरोलरी है दोस्तों, that just as liberalism gives me a lot of different types of individual freedoms, similarly it also gives me the freedom in economic sphere also. तो जैसे पॉलिटिकल स्फीयर में आई एम फ्री टू स्पीक, टू एसोसिएट, टू राइट, टू एक्सप्रेस, सो ऑन एंड सो फोर्थ, सिमिलरली द सेम आइडिया ऑफ लिबरलिज्म ऑल्सो गिव्स मी द राइट इन द इकोनॉमिक रेलम कि मैं जो चाहे उस इकोनॉमिक एक्टिविटी को, वोकेशन को मैं प्रैक्टिस कर सकता हूं। द स्टेट कैन नॉट स्टॉप मी फ्रॉम दैट। डू यू अंडरस्टैंड दिस? कैपिटलिज्म is nothing but liberalism in action in the economic sphere. Got this idea now? ठीक है, तो जितना समाज लिबरल, अब देखिए यूएसए पॉलिटिकल लिबरल है, उतना ही वो इकोनॉमिकली भी लिबरल है. ठीक है, देयर आर सो मेनी इंडियंस, फर्स्ट जनरेशन इंडियंस हु वेंट एंड सेट अप देयर बिजनेसेस इन सिलिकॉन वैली. ठीक है, एंड दे आर बिग शॉट्स देयर टुडे. व्हाई? बिकॉज द अमेरिकन सिस्टम डज नॉट से तुम तो बाहर से आए हो, ठीक है, हाउ डेयर यू एस्टैब्लिश बिजनेस ओवर हियर, वी आर गोइंग टू टैक्स यू मोर. नो, everybody has the right to do it. Why? Because liberalism talks about individuals' rights and freedoms. जो political sphere में है वही economic sphere में भी है आपके लिए. Got the point now? ठीक है, so that is one. Church, first point clear हो गया. Church का influence हमेशा क्या करता है? Religion का influence. Church का मतलब यहाँ religion है. Religion always makes you more rigid, more rule bound, less courageous, less experimenting, less bold. Church wants you to think about the afterlife. मरने के बाद क्या होगा, ठीक है? और चर्च का जब तक ये इन्फ्लुएंस रहेगा तब तक आप जो है वो कुछ आगे प्रगति नहीं करेंगे, विकास नहीं, क्योंकि अगर जिंदगी मेरी ऐसे ही खत्म होने वाली है, मरने वाली है, why the hell should I take the trouble of establishing a factory here? ठीक है, I might as well just do पूजा पाठ, अर्चना, नमाज, whatever it is my religion says, and live my life just like this and die away. ठीक है, ये इन्फ्लुएंस जो चर्च का था वो ब्रिटेन में नहीं था. समझ रहे हैं आप इसको? क्लियर? ओके, यस. सो सोशल फैक्टर्स हो गए हमारे. नाउ बेस्ड ऑन दिस, इफ आई गिव यू अ क्वेश्चन, can you write an answer as assignment? Simple question I'll give you. Take down a question. Take down a question. Discuss the factors. Discuss the factors that led to. Discuss the factors that led to Industrial Revolution in England. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Yes. So we are going to have a special session on that. All of these words. कि ये जब क्वेश्चन में आते हैं, इनको जो है वो टेल वर्ड्स भी कहा जाता है, इनको मैंडेट्स भी कहा जाता है, कीवर्ड्स भी कहा जाता है. Each one of them has a slight nuance. Okay, but right now, since we are at a very initial stage, I don't want to burden you with that. Okay, I will tell you all of these words and how the treatment slightly changes when these words are there. It's like, say Maggie hoti hai. Simple example. The same Maggie can be cooked in 100 different ways. Maggie is the same. What has changed is your treatment in the cooking. और थोड़ा टेस्ट बदल जाता है उसकी वजह से. The same thing is there with these words. The easiest and most commonly used keyword is discuss. Okay? और discuss में क्या करना होता है? It's पूरा मैदान खुला है आपके लिए. You just have to bring out all the different facets associated with the statement that is given. So it's the easiest. Okay, that's why I've used a discuss question only. And your question is very valid, but just wait for the right time where I'll discuss all of these things. So you'll be able to write this question. Now what I want you to do is, after you go home, you can refer to the class PPTs. All the points are there. You can refer to the class note. The note, I think today or tomorrow they will give you. Even if the note is not there with you, you can look up on the internet also if you like. Open book I want you to write. ठीक है, 150 words का आंसर जो है वो आपको लिखना है. Getting this idea? don't be in a hurry. Okay, don't be in a hurry ke immediately I must be able to develop the answer writing skill. It takes time. Start writing open book. First, get over the fear कि I can write answers. Okay? एक बार जैसे से आपका स्किल डेवलप होगा तो फिर we'll go one step by step. So right now open book and one answer. Tomorrow we are going to see those answers individually सभी के. चलिए now let's go ahead and we'll talk about spread of the industrial revolution to other parts of the world. Spread of industrial revolution to other parts of the world. How does it spread? Now, some of these countries we'll talk in detail. I'll just give you an overview. First area where it started to spread was the low countries. What are these low countries? Netherlands, Belgium, okay, Luxembourg, this area, the countries there, they are called as low countries. Why? इसलिए नहीं कि वहां गिरे हुए लोग रहते हैं. Low countries because the land is very much parallel to the sea level. Okay, so that's why they are called as low countries. In fact, if you see Amsterdam is like a cup, okay, and some part of it is actually subsiding below the sea surface. So they have had to raise dikes, okay, to keep the sea water out. और अब जैसे जैसे climate change की वजह से ocean levels are rising, so Amsterdam is at a big risk because it's at a lower level. In fact, ये जो word है ना Netherland, this word Netherland is coming from nether, और nether वहां की जो लैंग्वेज है डच लैंग्वेज, उसमें उसका मतलब जो है वो लो ही होता है, उसी से नेदरलैंड ये वर्ड बना है. These areas are very close to Britain on the other side of the English Channel, and that is why there were many similarities between England and these countries. What were the similarities? Geographically, there are pretty common things. This area also, like Britain, had harbors, indentured coastline, therefore harbor. हार्बर होगा तो क्या होगा? मैरीटाइम ट्रेड होगा. अच्छा, इनका लोकेशन ऐसा है कि दे आर देयर लाइक एट द डोर स्टेप ऑफ यूरोप इफ यू आर कमिंग फ्रॉम द अटलांटिक का साइड. एंट्री पॉइंट है टू गेट इनटू कॉन्टिनेंटल यूरोप. So all the trade and commerce of interiors often was routed via these areas. So naturally, if there is more trade and commerce, there will be more capital accumulation. More the capital accumulation, the higher the chances that industrial revolution can develop. And since they are pretty close to Britain, that is why they were able to see how Britain was drastically getting transformed in industrial revolution. और नेचुरली ऐसा होता है ना कि हमारे जो नेबर है उसने कोई नया और सक्सेसफुल बिजनेस डेवलप कर लिया, तो दूसरा जो नेबर है उसको अंदर से वो होती है कि नहीं कि भाई मुझे भी ये चीज करनी है, आई ऑल्सो वॉन्ट टू बिकम वेल्दी, राइट? सो दीज कंट्रीज दे स्टार्टेड टू एम्यूलेट द मॉडल दैट ब्रिटेन वॉज यूजिंग इन इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन. ठीक है, क्या किया इन्होंने? कैपिटलिस्टिक स्टेट. अब देखिए फैक्टर्स वही रहेंगे जो हमने ब्रिटेन के केस में देखा है, ठीक है ना, बिकॉज बेसिक आइडिया इज द सेम. व्हाट विल दे डू? बैंकिंग सिस्टम, रेलवे का डेवलपमेंट, रोड, ट्रांसपोर्ट एंड कम्युनिकेशन, कैनाल बेस्ड systems. State will pass many laws to support industry. All of that was happening in Britain. With a slight time lag is going to happen in these countries also. ब्रिटेन ने बड़ी कोशिश की थी बाय द वे, ये टेक्नोलॉजी और ये सिस्टम हमारे देश से बाहर ना जाए. So they had passed laws that workers who had been trained in the industry and machines that have been used, they should not be allowed to go to other countries. But still, using means fair and foul, smuggling वगैरह भी use हुआ है इसमें, and a lot of stuff and a lot of people were taken to the other side, and ultimately in these areas also we see spread of industrial revolution. Clear? Yes, no, can't say? Yes, okay. Next country is France. France is like the rival traditional rival of Britain. For 1000 years, for almost 1000 years, you will see that there was a rivalry between whom? Between Britain and France. Okay? But the French government was very feudal in nature, unlike Britain. ब्रिटेन का कैसा हुआ था? कैपिटलिस्टिक, मर्चेंट्स, राइट, ग्लोरियस रेवोल्यूशन, डेमोक्रेसी. फ्रांस के अंदर में यू हैड एब्सोल्यूट मोनार्की till the revolution takes place. Because of that, France could not understand quickly how Britain was transforming. Only after the French Revolution in the 19th century, Napoleon realizes that okay, if we want to compete with Britain को अगर हराना है तो आपका इकोनॉमिक जो बैकबोन है वो बहुत स्ट्रांग होना चाहिए. अदरवाइज यू कैन डिफीट. सिर्फ शौर्य के बेसिस पे आप किसी देश को हरा नहीं सकते. शौर्य तो चाहिए, लेकिन उसके साथ साथ में यू नीड अ वेरी स्ट्रांग इकोनॉमिक स्ट्रेंथ. दैट वाज लैकिंग इन फ्रांस. सो नेपोलियन फर्स्ट स्टार्टेड टू टेक सम स्टेप्स टू इंडस्ट्रियलाइज फ्रांस. अब क्या करेंगे नेपोलियन, आप मुझे बताइए. व्हाट विल नेपोलियन डू? Yes, establish what? Okay, attract investment, banking system, infrastructure, railways. So the factors remain the same because the formula is the same, no? It's about who is learning when in their own context. ठीक है? But Napoleon ज्यादा दिन रहा नहीं. 1815 में वो हार जाता है and France suffers a setback. After that, subsequent two more rulers will try to make France more industrialized. 1870 के बाद में on a bigger scale France will start to, France में डेमोक्रेसी पूरी तरीके से आ जाएगी, रिपब्लिक बन जाएगा, and then we'll see that France will rapidly industrialize. ठीक है. जर्मनी और इटली यहां पर जो है ये हम सेपरेटली डिस्कस करेंगे when we discuss the topic of unification of Germany. Do you understand this? How they industrialized? हमने किसकी बात की? We spoke about low countries. We spoke about how France learned, but learned slow with a time lag. And then in the 19th century, it will start to industrialize. I told you this, I will share separately. And these remaining now, I'm going to deal with in one slide each. अलग से. ठीक है? तो एक एक की अब हम यहां पर में बात करते हैं. Let's start with Japan and its industrial revolution. Okay. Before I go into Japan and its industrial revolution, I'll have to tell you a little bit of background. ठीक है? थोड़ी सी इसकी जो है वो पार्श्वभूमि बैकग्राउंड हमको जो है वो समझना पड़ेगा. See, Chinese and the Japanese were a very advanced civilization in ancient medieval times. Okay? यूरोप के अंदर में चाइनीज गुड्स का खास तौर पे जो है वो बड़ा चर्चा होता था. चाइनीज सिल्क, चाइनीज पोर्सिलेन, चाइना की चाय खास तौर पे बहुत पॉपुलर थी. आपको पता है चाय कैसे पहुंची वहां यूरोप में? बाय एनी चांस डू यू नो? नोबडी नोज? वास्को ड गामा जब भारत आए 1498 में, उसके कुछ सालों बाद पोर्चुगीज जो है वो चाइना का रूट फाइंड आउट कर लेते हैं और चाइना के अंदर में जो है वो चाय वहां की उनको पता चलती है. वो उसको एज अ बेवरेज एक्सपोर्ट करते हैं टू देयर कंट्री पोर्चुगल. पोर्चुगल के अंदर में चाय जो है वो काफी पॉपुलर हो गई. वहां पर एक प्रिंसेस थी, प्रिंसेस कैथरीन ऑफ ब्रिगेंजा. तो ये कैथरीन जो थी, इसको चाय का चस्का लग गया. सो उसको हमेशा जो है वो चाय मॉर्निंग इवनिंग इट बिकेम अ फेवरेट बेवरेज फॉर हर. इत्तेफाक ये हुआ कि पोर्चुगीज, डच और ब्रिटिश ये तीनों भी भारत में आ जाते हैं और आपस में पहले पोर्चुगीज आए, फिर डच आए, फिर ब्रिटिश आए, और इनके बीच में जो है वो संघर्ष होता रहा. There was conflict between Portuguese, Dutch and British. Portuguese were defeated by both. First the Dutch defeated them, then the British also defeated them. So Portuguese realized that we can't fight with both these powers. With whom? Dutch and British. We have to compromise with one of them. So the Portuguese decided that okay, we'll compromise with the British rather than the Dutch. So दोनों सरकारों के अंदर में बातचीत हुई and they decided to become friends. And in the ancient medieval times, dear students, whenever such friendship was done between governments, the way to seal that friendship was to have marital relations in the royal families. ठीक है? तो पोर्चुगीज और ब्रिटिश लोगों ने डिसाइड किया कि हमारे यहाँ के प्रिंस प्रिंसेसेस की जो है हम शादी करवाते हैं. तो वहां से कुमार प्रिंस चार्ल्स और यहाँ से कुमारी प्रिंसेस कैथरीन ब्रिगेंजा, इनका जो विवाह है ये तय हो गया. और कैथरीन जो है चली गई ब्रिटेन. ब्रिटेन वो जब गई हैं तो अपने साथ में वो चाय का शौक भी लेकर के गई, और वहां पर मैं फ्यूचर क्वीन को चाय पीते हुए देख वहां की जो एलीट सोसाइटी थी, दे ऑल स्टार्टेड टू कॉपी संस्कृताइजेशन. पीपल ऑलवेज एम्युलेट दोज हु आर मोर एलीट देन देम. So they started to copy the tea wala thing, and that's how tea became extremely popular in Britain. So much so that just like in India also, largely we can say that people have a craze for tea. We need 2 cups at least a day. Britain में भी आज भी वैसा है. British people typically start their day with tea, and the credit for that goes to Catherine of Braganza. ठीक है. एक और इंटरेस्टिंग स्टोरी इसके साथ एसोसिएटेड है, वो भी मैं ब्रीफली शेयर करता हूँ. जब ये शादी हुई प्रिंस चार्ल्स और कैथरीन की, तो उस वक्त में पोर्चुगीज के पास 7 आइलैंड्स थे अरेबियन सी में. ठीक है. ये 7 जो आइलैंड्स थे पोर्चुगीज ने एज ब्राइडल गिफ्ट दिए. आप दहेज कह सकते हैं, ऑल्दो इट्स नॉट द राइट वर्ड, बट जस्ट टू मेक यू अंडरस्टैंड, दहेज के तौर पर मैं दिए किसको? प्रिंस चार्ल्स को. अब वो प्रिंस चार्ल्स वहां लंदन में बैठा हुआ है. इंडिया के अंदर में डायरेक्टली ब्रिटिश की तो सरकार नहीं थी, ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी थी, बस ट्रेडिंग कर रही थी उस वक्त. हम क्या ही करेंगे ना, ये 7 आइलैंड्स का छोटे छोटे हैं वो भी. तो उन्होंने वो ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी को लीज पर दे दिए कुछ 20 पाउंड्स में. और ये जो 7 आइलैंड्स थे, फिर एक ब्रिटिश गवर्नर ने सी को रिक्लेम करके उसमें से एक सिंगल आइलैंड बनाया जिसको उन्होंने बॉम्बे नाम रखा. तो ये जो सिटी ऑफ मुंबई है हमारी, ये कैसे बनी है? इट हैज कम फ्रॉम साउथ मुंबई. हाँ, इट हैज कम आउट ऑफ रेक्लेमेशन फ्रॉम द सी बाय कनेक्टिंग दीज 7 आइलैंड्स टुगेदर. इसीलिए उसको आइलैंड सिटी जो कहते हैं ना. ठीक है. द रीजन बिहाइंड दैट इज दिस. हालांकि वो आइलैंड नहीं है ना, पेनिनसुलर टाइप में है, बट टू बिगिन विद इट वाज दीज 7 आइलैंड्स. और कैसे आई वो? अगेन प्रिंसेस कैथरीन ब्रिगेंजा वहां पर मैं रिस्पॉन्सिबल थी. बात समझ में आई आप लोग के? ठीक है. ओके, कमिंग बैक ओवर हियर. So why was I telling you about this entire story? So the Chinese and the Japanese were pretty advanced for their times, and the Europeans were at their doorsteps like begging कि भैया आपके products हमको दे दो, we want to trade and sell that. चाय की बड़ी डिमांड है आपकी, सिल्क की बड़ी डिमांड है. और चाइनीज लोगों का एटीट्यूड ये होता था कि ये गंदे से लोग जो हैं, these Europeans, we don't even want to see their faces. Okay? The Chinese told, you can come to our वन पोर्ट ओनली, कैंटोन का पोर्ट है, वहां पर आओ, जो भी खरीदना है खरीदो एंड गेट लॉस्ट फ्रॉम हियर. वी डोंट वांट टू ट्रेड विद यू आल्सो. बट ओवर द पीरियड ऑफ टाइम, एंड दैट स्टोरी इन डिटेल आई विल टेल यू इन चाइनीज रेवोल्यूशन, ओवर द पीरियड ऑफ टाइम द चाइनीज एम्पायर स्टार्टेड टू बिकम वीक, एंड द ब्रिटिश फर्स्ट एंड लेटर ऑल यूरोपियंस गॉट स्ट्रैंगल होल्ड ओवर द चाइनीज. So much so that the Chinese empire was carved out into zones where different European powers, British, French, German, Russians, even Americans for that matter, they had their own influence. It was called as sphere of influence. यानी चाइना के वर्चुअली इन्होंने टुकड़े कर दिए थे, जहां पर में चाइनीज एम्परर की नहीं चलती थी, फॉर ऑल प्रैक्टिकल पर्पसेस इन यूरोपियन पावर्स की चलती थी. बात समझ में आई आपकी? ये सब जो है वो बगल में जापान देख रहा था. जापान, group of small islands. The Japanese people were smart. आपका, if you go back to your school times and remember your modern Indian history lectures there, you would remember that your blood used to boil while reading about British expansion in India. You know, you would have felt, why did Indians not have the vision to understand their designs? Why we kept on repeating the same mistakes? होता था कि नहीं होता था? Japanese people were smart. They learned from the mistakes of the Chinese, unlike Indians. The Japanese people realized that if we continue in the same manner as we are doing right now, living a medieval kind of a life, then very soon वही होगा हमारे साथ जो किसके साथ हो रहा है? चाइना के साथ में हो रहा है. ठीक है? Therefore, in Japan, we see a big revolution which is called as the Meiji Restoration of 1870. You remember yesterday I told you 1870 is a very important year in world history. So one more important development in 1870 was Meiji Restoration. यहां तक कहानी समझ में आई आपको briefly? So what happened in this Meiji Restoration? क्या बदला? Meiji Restoration के अंदर में the Japanese understood that Western imperialism अब हमारे दरवाजे पर आकर के पहुंच गया है. It's knocking. तो ठोठाओ तो अपने दार. Okay? And we have to resist this. But if we do it in our traditional fashion, that is medieval style, if we fight them in a medieval style, then it will be a fight between medieval versus modern. No matter how brave we are, how honest we are, how people of values and integrity that we are, even then, a medieval society can never defeat a modern society. You remember the revolt of 1857? Indians fought very bravely, very bravely. But could we defeat the Britishers? No. It would never have been possible for us to defeat the Britishers because it was a fight between a medieval society and a modern society. The Japanese understood this difference. So what did the Japanese do? The Japanese ended their medieval feudal era. Medieval feudal era. Feudalism याद है आपको? क्या होता था feudalism के अंदर में? At the top you have the ruler, और यहाँ Japanese के केस में they call him emperor. ठीक है? Below the ruler you have the feudal elements who have access to land, है ना? They collect tax for the state. They maintain an army, है ना? So these are people who are called as, in Japan they are called as samurais. Okay? Samurais. So they are below the emperor technically speaking, but they have land. On the land, the peasants or farmers are doing the cultivation and the samurais are collecting tax from them. These samurais fight for the emperor. Okay. In case of Japan, these samurais were very dedicated to the emperor. Unlike in Europe where the feudal lords were, they were looking after their own interest only. Japan में थोड़ा system better था. Okay. But it was all said and done a medieval system. So Japanese people decided that we'll end this feudal era completely, and this samurai class was now abolished. Few thousand samurai owned all the land in the country, and the majority of the population was doing what? It was doing farming on that land. Japan said, nothing doing, we will end this feudal system completely, and all the land was redistributed to the people. जैसे भारत में in our syllabus also you hear the topic of land reforms. हमारे यहाँ भी जमींदारी सिस्टम थी. Few zamindars owning several thousand acres of land, जिसमें many farmer peasant families are doing the cultivation. हमने क्या किया? We brought many laws to end this system. Partially successful हुआ, but हमने कोशिश की. जापान ने 1870 के अंदर में at one stroke they ended this entire system. And the samurais जो इसके beneficiary थे, they wholeheartedly accepted the end of their privileges for a greater national cause. It's a fantastic example of Rashtra Prem, love for your country. They gave up all their privileges. हमारे यहाँ क्या हुआ? देखिए हमारे बहुत सारे नवाब राजा इन्होंने क्या किया? ब्रिटिशर्स के साथ साइड किया. In 1857 revolt also, we have so many rulers who helped out the British. The Nizam helped, the Shindes helped, right? Why? Self-interest. और इसका बिल्कुल contrast you can see in case of Japan, where they accepted this reform, ended all the pleasures, land reforms were brought about, and Japan went towards modernization. Did you understand this? How Japan is transforming? Yes, no, can't say? Yes. Can I hear a louder yes, please? Yes. Okay. Now the Japanese felt that if we have to compete with the West, compete in the sense that if we have to save ourselves from this Japanese imperialism, then we will have to industrialize rapidly. Okay. And for this purpose, we have very less time. Britain के अंदर में industrialization had started from mid 18th century and we are at 1870 here. Almost a century का ये सारा process था. जापान ने वो सोचा कि हम एक सेंचुरी ऐसा रुक नहीं सकते टू रीच दैट लेवल, क्योंकि अगर हम इतने स्लो जाएंगे तो द वेस्ट विल गॉबल अस अप. इसलिए वी नीड रैपिड इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन एंड देयरफॉर स्टेट विल हैव टू टेक एक्टिव रोल इन दिस. स्टेट को सारी चीजें करनी पड़ेगी. वेस्ट में क्या हुआ था? डिफरेंस क्या था? वेस्ट में इट वाज द प्राइवेट सेक्टर दैट वाज डूइंग इट. स्टेट वाज ओनली एनेबलिंग, सपोर्टिंग. ठीक है. जापान ने डिसाइड किया कि नो, स्टेट हैज टू बी ऑन द फ्रंट फुट. स्टेट विल डू ऑल दीज थिंग्स, प्राइवेट सेक्टर विल बी इन द सपोर्टिंग रोल. डू यू अंडरस्टैंड द डिफरेंस? Everybody clear? There was a question I showed you yesterday. UPSC had asked, how was the latecomer industrial revolution in Japan different from the West? Remember that question? पहला डिफरेंस क्या है यहां पर में? फर्स्ट डिफरेंस इज जापान में जो इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन आया है, इट हैज कम बिकॉज ऑफ द प्रेशर ऑफ वेस्टर्न इंपीरियलिज्म. फर्स्ट डिफरेंस. Do you understand the first difference? Second difference that you have is West में industrialization was led by private sector, supported by the state. Japan में industrialization was led by the state, supported by the private sector. Clear about these 2 points? Okay. Shall we go ahead? Okay. What did the state do now? The state very actively invested in industries. खुद invest कर रहा है. West में क्या हो रहा था? Private players invest कर रहे थे. Now here the state itself is investing in industries. Infrastructure was built up. Okay. For example, railways. 1870 में the revolution takes place. And you know when the first railway was functional in Japan? You won't believe, in less than 3 years from this point, they have their first railway. Less than 3 years. And that is why to this date, the Japanese have maintained their edge in railway technology. Bullet train, Mumbai, Ahmedabad, where is that coming from? Japan. ठीक है. Many of our fast trains, ये तो बुलेट ट्रेन की नीचे वाली बोल रहा हूं मैं, we are using Japanese technology called as Shinkansen. Japanese tech we're using. In Japan, people go to work distances of 600 kilometers. Means somebody in Pune gets up in the morning and goes to work in Bangalore, comes back in the evening. You understand this? Okay. And moreover, while traveling this 600 kilometer ka distance to work or college or school also, if this train gets delayed by more than 5 minutes. 9 बजे पहुंचना है, 9:06 पर पहुंचती है. 9:06 if the train reaches, the driver of the train with folded hands says sorry to everybody. And a certificate is issued by it's private sector railway everywhere there. A certificate is given by the company that today the train which was supposed to come at 9 a.m. has come at 9:06. And that certificate is submitted in colleges and offices that the person came late not because of his mistake but because of the train being late. Do you understand this? Okay. This is the level of precision, the level of industrial advancement. Now, on a lighter note, I'm sharing this. On a lighter note, once it so happened that an Indian Railways ka train came dot in time. Dot in time. The entire station was elated that the train has arrived in time. All people gathered around the engine, got hold of that driver, mounted him on somebody's shoulder, garlanded him, and with dhol, tasha, and everything, they went to the station manager. The station manager was confused because of all this pandemonium. What is happening? He came out and he asked, what is wrong? I mean, why all this commotion? The people told him, ये भारतीय रेल का इंजन ड्राइवर है और बिल्कुल सही टाइम पे सटीक 2 बजे की ट्रेन 2 बजे लेकर के आया है. तो इस बंदे का जो है वो प्रमोशन होना चाहिए. You should, get some reward. The station master looked at the engine driver who was on somebody's shoulder, garlanded and everything, and he was giving a very embarrassing look. The station master soon understood what had happened. So he told the people who had gathered there, भारतीय रेल ने अपनी परंपरा पूरी निभाई है. What does he say? भारतीय रेल ने अपनी परंपरा पूरी निभाई है. ये तो कल वाली है जो 24 घंटे लेट आई है. This is just a joke, okay? But to make you, understand the level of precision that Japanese have, and typically, how things work with us. Indian Railways also is doing a fantastic job in a country as big and massive like India, with all its limitations. What Indian Railways has done is also remarkable. Yes, many areas for improvement are there, but जितना हुआ है वो भी काफी है. So जापान ने इंडस्ट्रीज में इन्वेस्ट किया, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर में इन्वेस्ट किया, एजुकेशन पर फोकस किया. Why the Japanese people? There a few years ago, the Japanese people were going around to support their team in the Football World Cup. Their team was doing particularly well in that Football World Cup, and they were visiting every stadium wherever there were matches of Japan. After every match, these Japanese people used to clean the entire stadium after the match. Typically, what happens after the match? People just want to go out, and they'll throw and litter everything and just leave that place as it is. The Japanese people cleaned the entire stadium before they went. Education, the values that they have. In the semi-final, or it was quarter-final, I don't remember, semi or quarter, Japanese team got ousted. Bahar nikal gayi. And when you're supporting your team and you reach that level, you've been hoping ke bhai hum final tak jayenge, and your team gets defeated. How disappointing that is. How painful that is. Even on that night, when they were in complete tears, they were still cleaning the stadium while wiping their tears. This is, national culture. It is built over generations. It is built through a education system that was developed in Japan. You understand this? Okay? Creating state-owned enterprises जो बाद में private हुए. आपने Mitsubishi का नाम सुना होगा? Mitsubishi, famous company for car manufacturing. This was originally a state-owned enterprise created during that time. फिर बाद में जब चीजें स्टेबल हो गई, स्टेट की जरूरत अब नहीं है, तो फिर प्राइवेटाइज कर दिया. बट पहले स्टेट आकर के खड़ा होता है कि हमारे पास तो उतना प्राइवेट सेक्टर नहीं है ना. वेस्ट में क्या था? वेस्ट के अंदर में मर्केंटाइल कैपिटलिज्म की वजह से दैट कैपिटल वाज देयर इन प्राइवेट हैंड्स, यहां पे वैसा कुछ नहीं था, तो कौन करेगा? स्टेट को ही करना पड़ेगा। दैट इज व्हाट वी सी ओवर हियर। गॉट दिस पॉइंट? थर्ड डिफरेंस समझ में आया आपको? अब फोर्थ डिफरेंस, जापान ने स्मार्टली डिसाइड किया कि भाई हम जो है वो वेस्टर्न टेक्नोलॉजी को ही अडॉप्ट करेंगे टू बिगिन विद। अपना पूरा ओरिजिनल रिसर्च करने जाएंगे तो बहुत टाइम जाएगा। बाय दैट टाइम दीज पीपल विल गॉबल अस अप। सो व्हाट डू वी डू? वी सिंपली copy and adopt what is best over there. In due course, we will have our own innovations. But to begin with, they have implemented the Western model completely. Okay? Fourth difference समझ में आपको? So they are not pioneers to begin with of industrial revolution. They have only adopted it. Okay? और इस adoption के लिए they send their people to study Western science, engineering, military practices. Their students were sent to Western universities. कि जाओ भाई वहां से पढ़ के आओ। और ये ट्रेंड आप देखेंगे कि सेकेंड हाफ ऑफ 19th सेंचुरी, स्पेशली ये 1870 के बाद से बहुत सारे ऐसे डिस्टेंट एरियाज से लोग वेस्ट में जाकर के पढ़ते हैं, और वेस्ट में एजुकेशन लेने के बाद में दीज पीपल विल कम बैक टू देयर कंट्रीज, एंड व्हेन दे कम बैक टू देयर कंट्रीज दे विल देन लीड द नेशनलिज्म, देयर नेशनलिज्म। Western ideas, Western sciences, Western political thought, all of this was introduced to people from Asia, चाहे चाइना हो, चाहे जापान हो, चाहे भारत हो। आप देखिए हमारे जो इनिशियल लीडर्स थे इन द इंडियन नेशनल कांग्रेस, many of them were Western educated, were they not? Even if they did not travel to West, they were, very well read in Western thought and science. और उसी से वो इंस्पायर होते हैं कि भाई इनका राष्ट्रवाद है तो हमारा भी तो राष्ट्रवाद है। If the British nationalism is so strong that they want to control the whole world, we also have that dignity, that national pride, honor, that we want to have our own dominion. Got this? So Japanese people also did this. Got it? Next, collectivist culture, national culture. Collectivist culture. We are all together. We are in this. We are one. ये जो थॉट है ये जापान के अंदर में हमको डोमिनेंट दिखता है। इसको जापान में बुशिडो वैल्यूज भी कहते हैं। ये ऐसे में ये चीजें एथिक्स के अंदर में बहुत काम आती हैं एज एग्जांपल्स। बुशिडो वैल्यूज, बुशिडो वैल्यूज मतलब क्या? जैसे हम कहते हैं ना मर्यादा पुरुषोत्तम श्री राम। मर्यादा पुरुषोत्तम मतलब क्या? ही इज दैट आइडियल मैन, जो वैल्यूज होनी चाहिए एक व्यक्ति के अंदर में, उसका सबसे बेस्ट मॉडल, राइट? सो वैसे ही जापान का भी जो एक थॉट है कि क्या हमारी वैल्यूज होनी चाहिए, वो बुशिडो वैल्यूज जो है विच इन्वॉल्व्स लॉयल्टी, हार्डवर्क, अपने देश के प्रति लॉयल्टी, अपने एम्प्लॉयर के प्रति लॉयल्टी। आप देखेंगे जापान के अंदर में ये कंपनी से होंडा है, सुजुकी है, टोयोटा है, टिपिकली दीज आर प्राइवेट कंपनीज। Once a worker joins one of these companies, होंडा ज्वाइन कर लिया 18 साल की उम्र में, वहां जल्दी ज्वाइन हो जाते हैं। At the age of 18, he joins Honda. At 60, he'll retire from Honda, like a government job. From Honda, he will not jump to Suzuki. From Suzuki, he'll not go to Yamaha. ये सब नहीं होगा वहां। हमारे यहाँ क्या, प्राइवेट सेक्टर में पीपल कीप शिफ्टिंग जॉब्स, बट जापान में ये जो लॉयल्टी वाला कल्चर है वो इतना स्ट्रांग है दैट प्राइवेट सेक्टर के अंदर में भी once Honda means Honda, once Toyota means Toyota. And these people even after retirement, ये तो प्राइवेट सेक्टर है ना, गवर्नमेंट भी नहीं है, बट स्टिल इवन आफ्टर रिटायरमेंट दे विल मेक देमसेल्फ अवेलेबल फॉर द कंपनी। कभी भी कहीं जरूरत पड़ती है, इफ देयर इज एनी प्रॉब्लम, दे विल बी हैप्पी टू हेल्प आउट। दिस इज जापानीज कलेक्टिविस्ट कल्चर, बुशिडो वैल्यूज। अब सोचिए अगर प्राइवेट कंपनी के लिए इतनी लॉयल्टी होगी तो देश के प्रति कितनी होगी, समाज के प्रति कितनी होगी। समझ रहे आप इसको? ठीक है। वो स्कूल में आपने स्टोरी सुनी होगी, ट्रेन में एक व्यक्ति जा रहा था इंडियन, एंड ही केम अक्रॉस अ जापानीज मैन हु वाज स्टिचिंग द सीट्स ऑफ द ट्रेन। सो ही थॉट दैट ही इज अ एम्प्लॉई ऑफ द ट्रेन, एंड ही आस्क्ड हिम, what salary and all you get? He said, salary? I don't get any salary. This is not my job. So then why are you doing it? He says, because this is my country. If I don't do it, then who will do it? This is the attitude. If I don't do it, then who will do it? हमारे एटीट्यूड कैसा है? I don't care what is to be done. जिसका होगा काम वो देख लेगा. This is the difference in approach. Got the point? ठीक है. Next and very crucial point about Japan is its resource scarcity. एक और रह गया, मैं आता हूं उस पर. Resource scarcity. This is very crucial and very interesting also. Japan is a group of small islands. अब यहां कहां से आएगा भाई आयरन और कोल के बड़े बड़े रिजर्व्स? लिमिटेशन है, हर चीज पे लिमिटेशन है. So the Japanese people had to constantly innovate to become more and more and more and more efficient. आजकल अगर आप सोशल मीडिया पे देखते हैं तो there is a concept called as minimalism. Have you heard of this? Minimalism. Minimalism means what? You don't need too much of stuff to live a good life. You need minimal stuff. Where is it coming from? It's coming from Japan. Why from Japan? Because Japan has resource scarcity. They cannot afford to waste resources. And you'll see the best of management techniques, Six Sigma, just in time, Kanban, Kaizen. What are all of these? These are management techniques, technologies, systems for efficient production. All have come from Japan. All. Toyota company में एक concept था just in time, JIT. Just in time में क्या होता है पता है? Just in time के अंदर में in the manufacturing process, whatever inputs are needed, they are supposed to reach the factory just in time when they are needed, not before, not late. So the entire complex operation of the factory is designed in such a manner with such precision that everything, even a small nut that is needed, will not be there before it is required. Whenever it is required, around that time only it should come in factory. Why? Because they don't have space. Island है ना, छोटा country है. They can't stock things up, right? So just in time. All of these technologies have come from that resource constraint that they have. Got this? Okay. There was a negative side also to it. What was the negative side? Because they don't have sufficient land, it led to Japanese imperial ambitions also. We don't have sufficient land, sufficient resources. So what should we do? Once we become militarily strong, military modernization jab ho jata hai, the Japanese people start to wage wars with their neighbors. And in these wars, they occupy the lands of other countries. 1910 से लेकर के वर्ल्ड वॉर के एंड तक सारा कोरियन पेनिनसुला was under Japan. And they have done and surprisingly, they have done worst form of, exploitation, human rights violation of the Korean people during this period. Especially Korean women. There is a concept that was called back then. Now the name is not appropriate, but that is what it was called. They used to call Korean women as comfort women. So these Japanese soldiers, through these decades, when they were posted in Korea, so the local Korean women, they were sexually abused and exploited, and they used to call them euphemistically as comfort women. Many of these women are alive today also, okay? And that's why South Korea keeps on asking Japan to issue a formal apology for what they have done. In their bilateral relations, it's a very sticking point. Koreans want apology. The Japanese have not yet given that, but they have expressed, kind of remorse, but not formally apologized as such. Okay. Did you get this point? समझ में आया concept कैसे हो रहा है? Then last, Zaibatsu system. What is this Zaibatsu system? Large family-owned conglomerates. फैमिली ओन्ड, जैसे हमारे भारत में भी रहा. देखिए ईस्टर्न जो सोसाइटीज हैं उसमें फैमिली हमेशा इंपॉर्टेंट होती है ना. फैमिली इज द कोर फंक्शनल यूनिट ऑफ द सोसाइटी. इसलिए स्पेशली देखिए हमारे यहाँ पर जैसे इनकम टैक्स में भी हिंदू अनडिवाइडेड फैमिली एक कंसेप्ट है, HUF। वाई? बिकॉज हमारे कल्चर सोसाइटी के अंदर में वो फैमिली का रोल बहुत बड़ा है। सो बिजनेस के अंदर में भी फैमिली एक साथ में उतरती थी। तो जापान के अंदर में भी देयर वर दीज बिग फैमिली ओन्ड बिजनेस conglomerates that was called as zaibatsu system. This is different from west. वेस्ट में ऐसा नहीं होता। वेस्ट इज मोर अबाउट इंडिविजुअलिज्म, ठीक है, एंड ईस्ट इज मोर अबाउट फैमिली। सो ये डिफरेंस आपको यहाँ के बिजनेसेस के अंदर में भी आपको देखने मिलेगा। वेस्ट का जो इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन है वहां पे यू डोंट हैव फैमिली ओन्ड एंटरप्राइजेस, बट हियर वी हैव। हमारे यहाँ तो बाकायदा देयर आर बिजनेस स्कूल, जैसे निर्मा बिजनेस स्कूल है। दैट बिजनेस स्कूल इज स्पेशली केटरिंग टू फैमिली ओन्ड बिजनेस पीपल, you know that? So if you have come from a family of, you know, if your family owns a big business, you want to do MBA and further you want to continue with your family business, then a best option for you in India is Nirma Business School, where you learn how to run a family business. Got it? Interesting? Japan ki story? Write a question then. Discuss how industrial revolution of Japan was different from industrial revolution in the West. Discuss how industrial revolution of Japan was different from industrial revolution in the West. ठीक है, चलो let's go ahead. Now we'll talk about Russia. रशिया की थोड़ी सी बैकग्राउंड यहां पर में हम समझ लेते हैं। रशिया politically speaking was a very important country in Europe. But in terms of economy, it was a very backward economy. लैंड बहुत बड़ा है, टेरिटरी बहुत बड़ी है, पॉपुलेशन भी है सब्सटेंशियल, लेकिन इकोनॉमिकली बहुत कमजोर है। क्यों कमजोर था? फर्स्ट वाज क्लाइमेटिक कंडीशंस। अ बिग पार्ट ऑफ इट इज कोल्ड डेजर्ट, तो वहां कोई खास ऐसा कुछ हो ही नहीं सकता। साइबेरिया का बहुत बड़ा हिस्सा है ना। एशिया के अंदर में जो पार्ट पड़ता है दैट इज ऑल्सो ग्रासलैंड्स और डिफिकल्ट टेरेन। सो क्लाइमेटिकली देयर वर मेनी बिग चैलेंजेस। सेकेंड, द नेचर ऑफ द सोसाइटी वॉज वेरी फ्यूडल। इंडस्ट्रियलाइज होने के लिए यू हैव टू ओवरकम द फ्यूडल नेचर ऑफ द सोसाइटी। Whereas रशिया में क्या था? रशिया के अंदर में वी हैड अ फ्यूडल सोसाइटी, ठीक है। एंड बिकॉज ऑफ दिस रशिया हैड बीन इकोनॉमिकली वेरी बैकवर्ड। बट स्लोली एज ब्रिटेन स्टार्ट्स टू इंडस्ट्रियलाइज, रशियंस लर्न द इंपॉर्टेंस ऑफ इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन। 1856 में एक वॉर हुआ था which was known as the, any guess? Crimean War. Crimean War. You know Crimea or Crimea, where is it? यूक्रेन का पार्ट था ये। 2014 में प्यूटिन हैज टेकन इट ओवर, इस वॉर से बहुत पहले ही, ठीक है ना। I told you yesterday or day before yesterday the problem of Russia geographically. Russia is not protected on its western side. So the Russian monarch always wants to expand towards the west and towards the south. बात समझ में आपकी? तो 18th और 19th century में Russians were constantly trying to advance towards the west and southern direction. और जब वो एडवांस कर रहे थे तो उनके सामने था ऑटोमन सल्तनत, ऑटोमन सुल्तान, उसकी टेरिटरी, ठीक है। सो रशियंस वर फेसिंग whom? The Ottomans. The British and French felt, I'm just giving you a background, the British and French felt कि ये ऑटोमन्स जो है बहुत कमजोर हो चुके हैं 19th सेंचुरी में। कब से शुरू हुआ था ये? 14th century से this kingdom had started. By the time you are in 19th century, these people have become very weak. So the Russians will be able to defeat this power and take over substantial land and get access to Mediterranean Sea also on one side and also come towards Afghanistan. This was a red line for the British and French. पॉलिटिक्स ये लोग हमेशा आगे के 50 साल का सोच के करते थे. आगे चल के अगर मेडिटेरेनियन सी में रशिया आ गया तो इट विल बी अ वेरी बिग कॉम्पिटिटर फॉर अस. सो व्हाट शुड वी डू? वी शुड स्टॉप इट इन इट्स ट्रैक्स. So 1856 में when Russians were fighting the Ottomans, British and French came to the help of Ottoman Sultan. Not because they loved him, they hated him, but because of sheer politics to prevent Russia from advancing. Clear? And in this war, the British and French were able to defeat the Russians comprehensively. Okay? This made the Russians understand कि हमारी प्रगति जो है ये ब्रिटेन और फ्रांस को कभी रास नहीं आने वाली है और ये जब भी हम आगे बढ़ेंगे ब्रिटेन एंड फ्रांस विल कम एंड डिफीट अस. सो इफ वी वांट टू ओवरकम दिस then we have to become economically strong like Britain is today. And therefore mid 19th century onwards we see that the Russian rulers will start to take some efforts for industrialization. Do you understand this? ब्रिटेन क्यों हरा पाया इतनी दूर आकर के? बिकॉज इट वॉज अ मॉडर्न इंडस्ट्रियल पावर एंड द इफेक्ट वॉज देयर टू बी सीन. सो रशियन रूलर्स स्लोली स्टार्ट टू चेंज. अब क्या करेंगे? व्हाट विल बी द स्टेप्स दैट दे विल ट्राई टू टेक? कैन यू टेल मी सम स्टेप्स दैट कैन बी टेकन फॉर इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन? सिमिलर, यस. तो क्या क्या? क्विकली. अट्रैक्ट इन्वेस्टमेंट, पास लॉज, ठीक है, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, railways, exploiting of coal and iron, same kind of stuff. Okay, that starts from mid 19th century onwards. Tsar Alexander, अच्छा ये czar जो है, you will see 2-3 different types of spelling, TZAR and TSAR also, and in some cases very rare, but this will also be there. All of this is the same czar, which is the title of the Russian monarch. ठीक है? So Tsar Alexander II abolished the practice of serfdom. Serfdom याद है हमने डिस्कस किया था फर्स्ट लेक्चर. बंधुआ मजदूर, tied to the land. So these people were released so that now your labor can be freed up for industry. ठीक है? जब तक ये सर्फडम होगा तब तक हम मिडिवल समाज में ही रहेंगे. Foreign investment was attracted, banking system was created, and many such steps were taken, and slowly Russia starts to industrialize. Okay? By the time it is World War I, Russia has reached some level of industrial competence, but nowhere a match to Western European powers. England के आसपास में भी नहीं था. But Russia में बड़ा jump आएगा after the Communist Revolution of 1917. कार्ल मार्क्स और लेनिन का सारा जो आइडिया है ये बेसिकली किस पर बेस्ड है? वर्कर्स का आइडिया है ना ये. कार्ल मार्क्स ने कहा था वर्कर्स ऑफ द वर्ल्ड यूनाइट, यू हैव नथिंग टू लूज बट योर चेन्स. ठीक है? तो इंडस्ट्रियल समाज की कंटेक्स्ट में ये आइडिया है. तो जब ये क्रांति आई है उसके बाद में आफ्टर दिस रेवोल्यूशन 5-year प्लान्स के जरिए से स्टालिन ने रशिया को रैपिडली इंडस्ट्रियलाइज किया. And by the time you reach World War II in 1939, USSR is one of the major industrial powers of the world. Okay? Did you understand the unique context of Russia? क्या लिखना होगा हमको उसमें? पहली चीज, politically significant but economically backward. Climatic conditions, feudal nature of the society. Mid 19th century का जो crisis है, Crimean War के आसपास, they realize and they start to change. Serfdom is abolished, investors are attracted, banking system infrastructure is laid out, and Russia starts to industrialize from 1870s onwards. World War I आते आते Russia is a significant industrial power. This will get a big jump after the communist revolution. Do we have 6 to 7 points to write an answer? Okay, fine. Chill. Let's take the last country in this context, which is USA. USA and Industrial Revolution. America is like England on steroids. England on steroids means whatever factors England had, which we discussed earlier, all of those factors on a much bigger scale are possessed by England. What are those factors? You see, England is also isolated. Is it? Sorry, USA is also isolated. In fact, more isolated than England. On one side it has Atlantic and on the other side it has Pacific. इसलिए it barely had to suffer any form of external aggression till to our times. वर्ल्ड वॉर 1 में उनकी जमीन पे कुछ नहीं हुआ. वर्ल्ड वॉर 2 में पर्ल हार्बर एक हुआ है इन पैसिफिक, बट बाकी और कुछ नहीं हुआ है. ठीक है. उससे पहले भी अगर आप देखेंगे ब्रिटेन के साथ में जो लड़ाई हुई वही. Apart from that, they did not suffer anything. So they had this advantage of isolation. Isolation की वजह से क्या होता है? आप stable रहते हो. You are not involved in other conflicts. और जब ये होता है, then your development takes place. It also has coal and iron reserves, again like England. Massive human resource. They attracted talent. Population कम था, so they attracted talent from across the world and continue to do even today. Liberal values, its importance we have understood. Government support, active support taken by the government also helped it. Okay. Next, after America got independence, it started to rapidly industrialize itself. In fact, one of the major demand of the 13 colonies in their struggle against Britain was they wanted to industrialize themselves. Britain का ये कहना था इन colonies से, किसी you are supposed to give us only what? Raw material. बस raw material देना. And give us your market. You don't industrialize. Because if colonies start to industrialize, then there will be competition for British goods. That Britain did not want. So you just give us these two things. Americans said, no, we also want to develop our industry. And then ultimately it led to the American Revolution. Okay. After the revolution now, USA starts to industrialize rapidly. Okay. North-South complementary nature. Northern colonies were more industrialized and southern colonies were more agrarian. So southern colonies used to give the raw material that was required, may it be cotton, may it be jute, may it be tobacco, may it be whatever, and the northern areas, they were into manufacturing. So there was a very complementary and healthy kind of a economic relationship within the country. This also helped USA. American cotton, like Indian cotton, was in great demand in Europe. Especially, as newer and newer technologies were introduced, ginning की machine आ गई, ठीक है. बाद में you have the sewing machine. ये सब कुछ जब आ गया, तो American cotton को जो है एक बहुत बड़ा boost मिला. Especially जब फ्रांस के नेपोलियनिक wars चल रहे थे 19th century में. At that time, Britain could not export to Europe. So American products were in great demand in Europe. America got a windfall gain. एक term है, याद रखिएगा. Have you heard of this? Windfall gain. Windfall gain means एक ऐसा gain या profit जो कि बहुत बड़ा होता है और आपने कभी उसको expect नहीं किया होता. Suddenly you get that. Like for example, you bought a property and something remarkable happened in that area and suddenly the prices shot up. So you get a big profit in that. That's called as windfall gain. Okay. So Napoleonic Wars were a windfall gain for USA. USA also developed a system called as Waltham system. Waltham नाम की एक जगह थी जहां पर में same machine was used for spinning, weaving and dyeing, in fact printing also. All the activity. टेक्सटाइल में हमने देखा था पहला स्टेज क्या होता है, जिनिंग, सीड निकालना. फिर कॉटन से हम क्या करते हैं, स्पिनिंग टू मेक yarn, and then yarn is woven, weaving to make cloth, and then that cloth is dyed and printed. Okay, so all of these activities could now be done on a single machine that was called as Waltham system, which developed in USA. Okay, I told you about the Napoleonic Wars. Sewing machine, this machine was also invented in USA. सिलाई की जो मशीन है, it was invented in USA by Elias Howe, 1846. So this also gave a great boost to ready-made clothes. Otherwise, what used to happen was, कपड़ा तो आपने बना लिया, लेकिन स्टिच करने के लिए again manual element was involved. Now with the sewing machine invented, this process also was mechanized. Got the importance now? So this was done in USA. ये क्या हो गया इसको? ठीक है. नेक्स्ट, पोस्ट सिविल वॉर, ये सारे अमेरिका के डिस्कशंस आएंगे व्हेन वी विल डिस्कस अमेरिका. आफ्टर द सिविल वॉर, यूएसए ओवरकेम इट्स मेजर इंटरनल प्रॉब्लम. नॉर्थ और साउथ का कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ओवरकम हो गया and the state could now completely focus on industrialization. So after 1865, again as I've told you, 1870 के आसपास becomes a very crucial time in world history. USA will now start to rapidly industrialize and focus completely on its economic development. So much so that World War I aate in 1914, USA is, as big or as major an industrial power as Britain. World War I, Britain हार रहा था, but it could survive because USA entered that war in 1917. Otherwise, Britain would have, lost that war. Germany would have won there. Big corporations were born. You might have heard about Morgan Stanley. Okay? So this corporation was developed in the 19th century. He was a big investor. You must have heard about the Rockefeller Group. सुना है आपने? Rockefeller Group, Rockefeller Foundation सुना है? नहीं. So Rockefeller was a big industrialist in USA. His start of, his basic area was in rock oil. हम लोग हमारे यहाँ पर में Rockwell बोलते हैं ना, rock oil. So that was his area to begin with. So many such big corporations were born in USA. Ford का तो नाम सुना ही होगा, right? Ford also, Henry Ford, he is again another big product or big corporation that was born in USA. So many such big corporations were born. Big industrialists were there in USA. Like for example, Andrew Carnegie. Andrew Carnegie के बारे में कहा जाता है friends, that if you compute his wealth to our times, time value of money अगर एक फॉर्मूला होता है, अगर आप उसको लगा लें, you compute his wealth to our times, then he can subsume the wealth of several Bill Gates. So he was the richest man of his times, वो तो था ही था, but apart from that, so rich that the richest people of our times, many times over, उसकी wealth थी. And you know what he started his career as? He started his career as a child labor in a steel factory. His parents were immigrants from Scotland. So with parents to support his family, he used to work as a child labor. And from that point to the richest man of the world, that is Andrew Carnegie. And Andrew Carnegie, at the time of his death, he created a foundation called as the Carnegie Foundation. That Carnegie Foundation is still working in USA, and it gives scholarships for different students to study in higher learning institutions in USA. It does, sponsorship for many research things. वैसे ही रॉकेफेलर फाउंडेशन भी है. हमारे यहाँ जो ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन हुआ था ना, हम वो याद आ गया मुझे. ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन को हेल्प करने के लिए, उसके रिसर्च के लिए रॉकेफेलर फाउंडेशन का रोल जो है वो बहुत बड़ा था. ठीक है. सो अमेरिका ने ऐसे बड़े बड़े कॉरपोरेशंस प्रोड्यूस किए, बड़े इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट प्रोड्यूस किए, और इन इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट ने सिर्फ अपना ही वो फायदा नहीं किया, बल्कि समाज के लिए, ह्यूमैनिटी के लिए भी इन्होंने बहुत कंट्रीब्यूट किया है. ठीक है. सो दिस इज हाउ इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन स्प्रेड इन यूएसए. ओके. सो वी आर एट दी फैग एंड ऑफ इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन. बस थोड़ा सा डिस्कशन हमारा बाकी है, तो कल हम उसको कंप्लीट करेंगे, और अमेरिकन रेवोल्यूशन हम कल स्टार्ट करेंगे. ठीक है. ये नोट आपको मिल गई है, इज इन द प्रेजेंटेशन. अच्छा, ठीक है. आई जस्ट चेक यू गॉट द लॉगिन फॉर द वेबसाइट. Okay, I think they're sharing it over there. So just check in your login. The PDF might be available over there. I've given you 2 assignments. I hope you've done the earlier assignments. You watched the videos, lectures. ठीक है. तो आप अब आज की जो assignment है, you have to write 2 questions. Open book लिखिए, but please write. ठीक है. Get into the habit of writing. धीरे धीरे हम उसको आगे की स्टेज पर लेकर के जाएंगे. Alright? Anything that you would like to ask or share based on what we have discussed today? Any doubts, queries, or any remarks for that matter? ठीक है. We'll call it a day then here today. I'll see you tomorrow in the class. Sure. Take care.
Is designed precisely. The word dunya appeared